I'm Andrew Harvey, and Carolyn Baker and I have just finished the last part of our trilogy, and it's called Saving Animals from Ourselves. I have to say that writing this book with Carolyn has been one of the most amazing and challenging and exciting processes of my whole life, because all my life I have wanted to write about animals, and I haven't felt able to express the full outrage and pain and possibility that I feel until now. And I cannot think of a better and more noble and wild and wonderful companion for this journey into what we're doing to animals and how we can change our relationship with animals than Carolyn Baker. Carolyn, what has the writing of this book, Saving Animals from Ourselves, evoked in you? What has it brought out in you?
Well, we have created a scenario in which we have combined mystical tradition with scientific evidence. And we now have the most incredible scientific evidence around the consciousness of animals. And then we have these beautiful mystical traditions that we can marry with that. And for me, it's produced a kind of rite of passage. We write the book in the structure of a rite of passage. We start
Absolutely. It's an initiation. It's a sacred initiation.
Yes. We start out with a vision of what's possible, a vision of what's possible for humans and animals in their relationship with each other. And then the second part of any initiation is the descent, the going down and within to tap into that which is less conscious, but so important in our psyches. And so we have a chapter on the descent and looking at some of the sobering data regarding animals. Although I want to add that this is not a long litany throughout the book of animal abuse. That's not what we've created. And finally, we come back up and we ascend from the descent in talking about people and work and organizations that are taking place on the planet that are so nobly helping and rescuing animals. And we dedicate the book to Jill Angelo Birnbaum, who operates the Moondog Farm in Eastern
Jill, it's so amazing what she's doing.
It is just incredible. And so for me, it's been a rite of passage in a sense, to go into my own divine animal within. And the subtitle of our book is A Manifesto for the Healing of the Divine Animal Within. And so
I think this is one of the major perceptions of the book, something we came up together, which is that one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing to animals, which is shocking and obscene and horrific beyond words, is that we're doing the same thing in so many dark, destructive ways to the divine animal in ourselves.
Yes.
Identifying that, which as far as I know, has never been identified in that same way before, was a huge revelation for us both. And we really went into two different versions of the book before we chose this structure. And both versions had a great deal to commend them, and they were passionate, they were outraged, they had the right facts, but they didn't help people in the kind of way that we yearn to help people, because from our own experience, we know how almost impossible it is to turn to face what we're doing to animals, how it's so shocking and so obscenely horrifying that unless you are armed with sacred practice, armed with deep knowledge of your essential identity, armed, as we try to help people in the first part of the book, with a glorious and resplendent vision rooted in the indigenous and in the mystical traditions of what could be possible, you simply won't be able to deal with what's happening, let alone respond to it. And then we had the idea, let's completely restructure the book. Let's make it into a divine initiation for the reader that really conveys everything that you and I have experienced on our journey with animals, which is not only how wonderful they are, how loving they are, not only how terrible what we're doing is to them, but actually something even more important. animals have guided us both into a sacramental vision of the creation, a creation brimming with the presence of God, and animals have helped us both learn how to love with the fullness of our being. Animals give far more than unconditional love, as you know, Carolyn.
Yes.
They're also guides into a wholly new way of loving and being, a much more embodied and radiant way. And it was that, I think, that really emerged in the last version of the book in a thrilling way, because I think we learned through the process how to kick away all of our inhibitions and really stand, not just for helping animals, but for accepting animals as guides into the most extraordinary new possibilities for the divine human. This, I think, is the radical passion of the book.
And we feel that you can't really understand the process or experience fully the process of healing the divine animal within unless you have certain spiritual practices to help you with that. And so we've incorporated those into the book. Every section of the book begins with a spiritual practice that helps you. The vision, for example, has a beautiful spiritual practice that gives you a sense of what's possible in the consciousness of animals and humans together. And then as we go into the descent, which is the sober,
yes,
we have a very, very sustaining practice that helps you really look at this. And then finally, at the end, when we see the work that is being done, the homecoming for animals that is possible in the final stage of initiation, we have beautiful practices for that. And so all the way through, we're holding your hand. It's as if we're saying, we know this is hard. We know some of this is beautiful and some of it's challenging and painful, but we're here with you. And we want to share this with you to help sustain you as you go along with us.
I love the way you said that, because in a way that's what an elder does, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
And I feel that in this book, our trilogy has reached a wonderful completion. Essentially, it's a trilogy of two elders who've come together at this terrible evolutionary moment to offer real, sober, and joyful ways through. And I feel very joyful about that, because it shows me that despite myself, I'm actually becoming someone who can see the full horror of the situation, but also can feel from my own experience and from working with people like you, thank God, Carolyn, what it's possible still to be and still to do, and to realize that, terrifying though this crisis is about the animals, if we can only look at what it's trying to teach us, and then look at the great mystical traditions and our own deepest experience for what we could live with animals, then in marrying the vision of the light with the inevitable confrontation with the terrible shadow of the human race and of our own hatred of our animal and our own projection of that hatred onto animals, uniting those two forms of wisdom provides in the third part the foundation for a grounded, sober, passionate, compassionate, total dedication to transforming this situation in the kinds of ways that Jill is doing by inviting animals, stray animals and dogs, into her own home in Moondog Farm, but in so many other ways also that everybody can now step up to do.
That is so true. And, our friend Jung talks about, and I certainly talk about, and you talk about in your work, the holding of the tension of the opposites.
That's it.
And how alchemically and spiritually important it is to be able to do that, because we can't transform anything, especially ourselves, if we can't hold. And, the global crisis is begging us to begin practicing that. And certainly the situation with animals is begging us to hold the light and hold the dark. And that's a really big job. And you need a lot of support for that. And so we're trying to give you that support in the book as we say, okay, can you step into this now? And we're going to be with you. Here's a practice for you. Can you now step into this? And it's really a journey that I loved writing with you, and
me too.
Everyone reads and enjoys reading it as a journey.
And I'd like to say in conclusion that for me, the really thrilling aspects of this book are three. The first thrilling aspect is, I think, our very stark and ferocious analysis of our long tradition of loathing our bodies and our long tradition of treating animals as mechanical engines that we can do whatever we want to. And we've grounded both in deep scholarship and historical facts so that both can become as clear as possible. And this is essential because we cannot go forward without really suffering, examining, and making conscious those shadows. The second thing that I think is absolutely essential about our book is that it goes into very deep detail, which has been thrilling for us to uncover, discover, and integrate into the extraordinary new discoveries that are being made about animal consciousness, its variety, its intricacy, its splendor, its richness, its depth of psyche and depth of emotion. This is a scientific revolution, we both believe, as significant as the scientific revolution of astrophysics. Because just as astrophysics opens up the entire universe as what the mystics know it to be, a dance of light and matter, a dance of opposites within a mystery of the one, and that is what astrophysics is showing us, is the actual physics of. So this extraordinary burst of scientific discovery is opening us up to the presence of this massive divine intelligence in all sorts of new, intricate, extraordinary ways in animals, which makes it absolutely impossible for us to indulge in our fantasy anymore of being superior. We've got to understand this new glory, and we've got to try and avail ourselves of all the helpful possibilities that are within it. Imagine if we could invent and find and discover ways of communing with these other kinds of intelligence instead of treating them as inferior. That is the foundation of a new set of relationships between the human race and animals. The third thing that I absolutely love about our book, and I'm glad that we just kicked away the chairs and said, look, what have we got to lose? Let's just say it, is our own personal testimony in it, because we didn't want to do too much of that at the beginning. I think we perhaps were frightened. I was certainly frightened of the depth of what has actually happened between me and my animals. But we just kicked away the chairs and started to sing out loud with no accompaniment about the real passion that we have both had. You for your wonderful dog, Sammy, and the other dogs that you've had, and me for my cats, and how that passion has transformed us mystically and spiritually, and how it's guided us into this tremendous new birth of the divine human, because animals, as I said, have this tremendous gift of teaching how to love with embodied radiant tenderness and strength, which is what human beings so desperately need to learn. So those three things are my passions. What do you respond in kind to that?
Well, you know, as you were speaking, and as I speak as well, we're using the word new a lot.
Yes.
This, new that. And yet, indigenous peoples,
of course,
have known for thousands of years.
Yes.
What we have discovered in this book, they've lived it, they've breathed it, they've slept it, they've walked it, you know, and then they've known so much more about how to commune with and be guided by animals than we do in the modern world. So we're bringing ancient wisdom, ancient experience into the picture, and wedding that with this new scientific information. And so I'm very proud of that you know, we drew in the indigenous traditions as well.
Well, I think it's very important because, in a sense, what our book is a new kind. It is a new kind of book. I don't think there's anything. There's certainly no book like this about animals. And I'm not aware of a spiritual book that's been written as a conscious initiation from beginning to end. I think this is a new form for both of us. I think it's a very important form for people at this moment, because we're in a time where there's a lot of different spiritual information out there, but there are very few books which take people through the stages that they're going to need to consolidate before they can deal with the extremity of the situation from a place of centeredness and groundedness and peace. This is essential for this next step of human evolution, and it's especially essential in what we both agree to be the most devastating area of human activity, this terrifyingly cruel treatment of the animal species. So this is something I feel at this moment in my life immensely grateful to be releasing with you, Carolyn, immensely grateful that we had the experience these 3 years working on it, and immensely grateful that we were able to boil it down to 200 pages, because we made a commitment that we wouldn't write a long book. We would write just enough in the clearest and most bladed way to give people all the facts and all the help and all the visionary inspiration that they could possibly need to stop being blind and in denial and start being strongly compassionate and start doing something real about addressing this within themselves and addressing this in the world.
Well, you know, it occurs to me as I reflect on these last 3 or 4 years, we started out with the first book, Return to Joy, and really worked to define what joy is and how it's different from happiness. And then we went, it followed the same pattern, really, I think, as, you know, vision and possibility and descent and homecoming. And so, you know, Return to Joy was a vision of possibilities. Savage Grace was the descent, the going down into the depths.
Into the depth of the horror of this crisis. And
Right.
we offer hope and strength and sober guidelines there.
Absolutely, and spiritual practices. And then finally, now this coming home, and realizing that our greatest allies are the
This
animals.
is so amazing. Yes.
And we didn't plan it that way, but that's the way
It was planned, wasn't it? And
it was planned.
it's so extraordinary to be able to sit, and I think we both can do this, and say that I've had very great masters in my life, the Dalai Lama, the B. Griffith, but truly, just as great teachers at the highest level have been my cats. And I think that's true for you also.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's very important at this moment that we shamelessly say that, because while people are attuned to some of the grace and beauty of animals, it's what the indigenous people have always known and what you and I have been graced to rediscover in the depth of our ordinary life that provides the next level of truth. Because what the indigenous peoples know is that every animal is not just sacred, but supremely gifted, an aspect of the divine, and that you need to be in a relationship of awe and respect towards all of the animals, because they carry great wisdom for you and can help you and can guide you at certain stages of the mystical journey into deeper and deeper integration. This is well known in the indigenous systems, but it's this knowledge that now we've lived and now we're sharing to encourage the whole spiritual world to stop just talking about human suffering, but start addressing the appalling suffering of the animals, because it's only through addressing our responsibility for it that we can heal the divine animal within ourselves, because it's only by reclaiming the love for animals and the honor and the respect for animals that we can start working on the most important aspect of the transformation that we are in, the reclamation of our physical bodies and our physical nature as completely holy and sacred, potentially.
Absolutely. You know, for me, what I've learned over the years is that my animals are my teachers. And the more I have grown, the more I consciously embrace my animal as my teacher.
Oh, yes.
I had a lot of dogs. And the current dog that I have now, I'm really embracing him. Yes, I'm the pack leader. You know, I feed him, I take him for walks, I provide a wonderful home for him. But he does things for me that I could never have imagined, spiritually and emotionally. And so he's my teacher, my spiritual teacher on many, many levels.
And Sammy is such a wonderful spiritual teacher because he's so naughty and vibrant and spontaneous. And I would say the same thing about Jade for me, is that especially in this last year, I can't really describe it. Mm-hmm. Our love has opened in the most extraordinary way, and I spend a great deal of time just being with her in a state beyond thought, in simple bliss, in simple, tender bliss, uniting through this experience that she is so lavishly giving me with the whole creation, and finding in our love an oasis of peace and truth and joy that gives me the courage and the strength to go on doing the work that I do. Often when I think of why am I doing this work? Why am I pouring myself out? Why am I trying to bring about a revolution of sacred activism? And the strange answer is I'm doing it for Jade. I'm doing it for my baby.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm doing it for my beloved.
Sammy lays beneath my chair when I write. When I do things like this in our conversations, he's there and he's present, and that animal energy, I need that. I don't want to write or talk without it. No, because it's not a full picture if I don't.
Well, it's been a long journey for both of us, I think, to reclaim our physical being and to learn how to trust love in its most naked, natural way. And I think for both of us, we've had massive traumas and massive journeys into darkness, and that animals have been given to us at this stage of our life as the grace for everything we've been through, as these supremely beautiful natural teachers of a wholly new way of being at one with the world and radiating from the depth of yourself compassion and tenderness towards others. It's an astounding experience, isn't it?
So we want everyone to read Saving Animals from Ourselves.
Please.
To catch the joy, to catch the beauty, to catch the pain, and to catch the promise of what can be when we really allow animals to be our teachers.
And let me end with some Rumi, just.
Oh, absolutely.
Run far away, my friends, from all false solutions. Let divine passion triumph and rebirth you in yourself. Let the divine passion that I now know lives in every human heart for animals. Let that triumph. Let it burst like a sun in your heart, and let it initiate you into a realm which you may never have imagined existed. And then let it give you the strength to stand up for animal safety, animal security, animal healing, and the healing of the relationship between humans and animals, so that we can truly birth a new world together.